Hi, this is Yaffi Lvova, registered dietitian with Baby Bloom Nutrition, and this is Nap Time Nutrition. And I'm just inviting Tracy Spackman, a gentle sleep coach, to join me. Today we'll be talking about nutrition and sleep. And what better way to talk about nutrition and sleep than with a sleep coach? So I've actually worked with Tracy myself, and hopefully this will be of a great benefit to you. So I'm just waiting for her to come on. Oh my God. Okay, Tracy, it's inviting you. Hey!
Hey,
Okay, Tracy, it's inviting you.
okay, I got it.
Oh, there's an echo. Okay, are we good?
I
Hey,
think,
okay, Tracy, it's inviting you.
okay. How's that?
I'm good over here. I heard an echo over there.
Oh, it's because I had on two different devices trying to figure out which way to go.
Oh, technology. Yeah.
I
So,
couldn't figure it out. My first time.
yeah. Well, okay, we're on now. So, welcome to Nap Time Nutrition. I'm really excited to have you. And I did a short intro that, saying that you're a gentle sleep coach. So, do you want to expand upon that?
Well, sleep training has gotten a bad rap because everyone thinks that when you say sleep training, they mean cry it out. And that's not what I'm out about at all. I'm all about infant mental health and figuring out the needs of the baby. And you can have security and sleep. So I don't do cry it out. I teach moms how to read the temperaments and the body language of their baby and help their baby to go through a gentle adaptation process to figure out how to relax and fall asleep with the parent right there offering lots of support the whole time. But with alert children, it's really hard. And so it's usually alert parents that parents of alert children that I work with, and I teach them to do a hands-on, non-cried out method to help their child learn sleep skills. It's totally different than what everybody else is doing.
Yeah, yeah, and it's really a breath of fresh air because you get a lot of people, especially from the previous generation, saying that the only way to get your baby to sleep through the night is to let them scream. And if
And
anyone
that's
has
just not true.
tried to do that, it's so painful to just stand there while your child is upset. So Tracy really offers a much better, gentler method, and it's more gentle on the baby, but it's also more gentle on the mom.
Yes,
So.
on both.
Yeah. So there are a lot of myths concerning nutrition and sleep, things that you can do in order to manage your child's nutrition in order to get them to sleep. So we're going to discuss some of those myths, why they're not true, and things that you could actually do to improve your child's sleep with a little bit of nutrition. And Tracy has some tips of her own as well. So the first thing, the most glaring, obvious one that we hear all the time is rice cereal in the bottle. Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. Okay, so the thing is that I'm going to talk about milestones and when you should start feeding solids to your child. But the truth is that even when you have an 8-month-old, a 10-month-old, you don't want to put rice cereal in the bottle. And there are a few reasons for that. At that point, they're developmentally appropriate to have that rice cereal in their gut. But there are other issues. You want to teach your child to have a healthy relationship with food, and part of that is self-regulation when it comes to caloric intake, how many calories they're getting. They need to know what's in the bottle. They need to have some control over what they're putting in their body. And by putting rice cereal in with formula or breast milk, you're really kind of messing with that self-regulation that they have on their own. It also dilutes the nutrient composition. Um, Before
Oh,
6 months, what's that?
yeah. Rice cereal is empty calories.
It is. Rice cereal specifically, that's a whole other nap time nutrition about why rice cereal is kind of pointless anyway. But specifically in the bottle, it dilutes the nutrient composition of what you're actually giving them. It's empty calories, and then when you're adding it to something that's really nutrition heavy, like breast milk or formula, it's really going to just dilute what they actually need. And before 6 months, you have a choking hazard. And the reason why there's a choking hazard is because you may notice most babies have some amount of spit up at some point. That's natural. But when you introduce a solid food before the baby is ready for it, it curds in the stomach, and that spit up gets super chunky. And especially now that we have the whole lay the baby on their back thing for when they're sleeping, they don't have the control to turn their head and get it out of their system. So when you have those curds come up and the baby's sleeping on their back, they can't get rid of that. And that's why it's a choking hazard. That's why it's a terrible idea.
There's actually studies that say that when you introduce solids too early, it causes more wake-ups, not less. Mm-hmm. It's the opposite.
Right. And there have been specific studies stemming even from the 80s and ongoing to now that giving rice cereal as a method to make them sleep longer is not effective anyway. So
babies at 4 months are not supposed to sleep a lot. They're supposed to wake up to get connection, to get extra calories. It's normal for the body just to wake up and make sure that all of their systems are functioning normally. A baby to sleep through the night at 4 months is rare. And if it happens, that's awesome. Good for your baby, but you don't want to force that to happen.
Right, and that's a really good point. We need to make sure that our expectations as mothers are in line. And when you hear people talking about how their baby came home from the hospital and slept through the night from the first night, number one, maybe they're not remembering right. And number two, that's not your child, and it's not normal. And the reason why that's a story to tell is because it's not normal. I mean, it's not like you hear on the news, mother came home with baby and baby didn't sleep through the night for the first 6 months. That's not a story because it's totally normal.
And healthy. It's healthy not to sleep through the night.
And healthy. Of course, if there is a lot of waking, it could be an indication that there's something wrong digestively or something going on. Maybe a cold, maybe teething, but also gas, fussiness, colic, eczema. There could be a lot of indications of food problems that we could address. And really, I think that a thing with Tracy and I have had some clients in common because it's difficult to get sleep down when you're battling with a food allergy or an intolerance. And so that's why it's good to have both of us on a team. And later we're going to talk about how we're actually going to be partnering. So here's another thing, solids before milk. It's really important to know what the milestones are and when your child is appropriate for different types of feeding. So for the first 6 months, it's really just breast milk and formula. And there are specific signs that are going to tell you whether your child's ready for something more solid than that. And that's another topic, but it's generally 6 months and it's not going to be much sooner than that. If you have a child who is born at a low birth rate or premature, it's going to be after 6 months. And it's important to know that. But also, the milk or formula is your primary nutrition until 12 months, which means that comes first. And if you try manipulating that by putting solids before milk, you're prioritizing the calories that come from solids and the nutrition that come from solids over milk. That's not going to give your child the type of nutrition that they need. You really need to prioritize that milk because the milk has the appropriate amount of carbohydrates to fat to protein. It's got all of your micronutrients as well as if you're doing breast milk, you've got probiotics in there, you have other antibodies, and that's really going to take priority nutritionally over solids.
And that doesn't mean you have to feed your baby in the middle of the night, nursing or formula a million times all night, but the American Academy of Pediatrics says that one feeding in the middle of the night until 12 months is totally appropriate. That doesn't mean you have to do one middle of the night feeding until 12 months, but if that seems to be what your baby wants, it's fine and healthy and normal.
Right, it's perfectly healthy to have a feeding overnight until 12 months. I also saw that you can give dessert to increase your child's solid food intake. Okay. That's a whole lot of issues right there. Your baby knows how many calories they need and what type of nutrition they need. And by trying to entice them to eat more than their belly wants is really going to create poor food habits down the line, and it's going to create an unhealthy relationship with food. Also, overloading their nutrition more than they really want is going to cause more tummy discomfort, and it's going to cause increased waking, as Tracy mentioned. Another thing is that a lot of times women are told to switch to formula for the purpose of having the child sleep through the night. Not because there's any, like, maybe someone wants to be breastfeeding, maybe they're just really tired, and so they're told, hey, give a baby formula specifically for sleeping. And this is not a great idea. You give formula when you're not breastfeeding, but you don't switch to formula just for the purpose of sleep, because it's been proven to not be effective anyway.
No, formula-fed babies don't actually sleep longer than breastfed babies. There is research articles and on the internet that actually says both, and you have to look to see who's funding the research. The formula company?
That's a really good point.
Or doctor.
Formula companies have a huge stake in this, which is why even if you look at the growth charts that doctors give out, they'll have formula companies that have been sending them those growth charts. They have, it's really common for formula companies to sponsor these type of studies. So it's really good to be watching to see who's sponsoring it.
So if you want to breastfeed your baby in the middle of the night, please do. And for moms who work and don't get to spend as much time with their child as they want to, adding a feeding that you might think that your baby doesn't really need, but if it's before you go to bed and your baby has already gone to bed and you pick them up and do it as a dream feed, it's a great way to reconnect with your baby, and it's not unhealthy to do that. It's totally fine.
Right. I'm a big fan of the dream feed myself.
Me too.
So poor sleep can have some nutrition causes. So let's talk about that. If you have some tummy discomfort, some gas or some reflux from food triggers, that could cause poor sleep. The baby's going to wake up more often if they're having some kind of discomfort. And if you feel with your gut instinct that that's really what's going on, it's best to talk to your pediatrician or consult a professional.
Like Yaffi, yes.
Like me.
Help you figure it out. I don't have the answers. I cannot diagnose or figure out what is waking your child up when they wake up, they're in pain. But if your baby is back arching in their bed, that means that they're in pain, and you absolutely should pick them up and try to figure out what is making them uncomfortable. And the food that the mom is eating that's going into her breast milk absolutely can make a difference. And it's not impossible to figure it out.
Yes, it takes some work, some journaling, but it's pretty easy to pinpoint. There are some foods that are much more common to cause discomfort, and that's where you start, and we go from there. Also, speaking of foods to eliminate while breastfeeding, caffeine, alcohol, and certain medications. So you probably have heard this. If you have a beer or a glass of wine before your last feed of the night and then feed your baby, they get just a little tiny bit, enough to send them to sleep. Yeah, we're not advocating that. No, we're not advocating that. But, it really has, there's more to look at, because even with adults, when you sleep under the influence of alcohol, you don't get to that level of deep sleep that's really restful and restorative. So the same holds with infants. If they are sleeping under the influence of the residue of your beer or wine in the breast milk, they're really not going to get that restorative sleep that they need in order to hit their milestones appropriately, etc. So that's not a good tool.
Yeah, I don't drink, and a lot of my friends don't drink. And so my big question when I was nursing was, how many Diet Cokes can I really have and not affect my baby?
Oh, Diet Coke.
I'm working on it.
Okay, it really has a lot to do with personal physiology and how you process it. My body doesn't, personally, I don't process caffeine very well. So if I were to have some caffeine, it really affects my baby very much. But some people can have a cup of coffee and then go right to sleep. And so theoretically, their body's processing it better and not as much as ending up in the breast milk. So it really depends a lot on you. I'm very weird with that. If I have a cup of coffee or I can't even say a soda because I don't know the last time I had a soda.
So you're saying watch your baby's behavior and see how they respond to that, because it's going to be baby specific?
Yes, that's exactly it. It is going to be specific to the mother-baby pair, and just watch for signals, much like with anything else. So also, coming back to the inappropriate foods for age, which I've hit on a couple times, I'm probably going to hit on it again because it's a really big deal to make sure that up until that 6-month point, hitting the appropriate milestones, your child is not having any solid foods. And then you're staying with milk or formula as the primary nutrition that comes first before solids until they hit about a year. So that's going to mess with your sleep if you're feeding them inappropriately, because the truth is that they're not getting that nutrition that they need. If you think about it, oh, I'm going to give my child pureed carrots, and that's a really common first food, and I have nothing against pureed carrots, but it does not hold a candle to breast milk as far as nutrition. And if you were to try to lose weight, you might have a plate of steamed carrots, right? This is diet food. This is not food that's meant to sustain a baby or an adult. So you really want to make sure that your child is getting the nutrition they need, which is going to come from breast milk or formula up until that year point. And
A lot of
at
people
that
ask
point,
me,
switch to solids first. What's that?
a lot of people ask me when we talk about sleep and sleep schedules, well, when do I feed my baby? And so a good sample is when your baby wakes up in the morning. Hopefully you've had the longest stretch of sleep, so they wake up hungry, and they wake up and you give them a nursing. And then if they're over 6 months, then you can offer them some solids. And then sometime before the next nap, you can offer them another nursing. And if you want to offer them another feeding after the nap, and then lunch, and then a feeding, and then a nap, and then wake up, and then have a nursing snack, and then another nursing, and then maybe the third nap for babies under 9 months, and then wake up, and then have a nursing snack, and then dinner of solids, so nursing, then solids, and then another nursing. So the nursings could actually be anywhere from like 1 to 3 hours away from each other, and it doesn't have to be at a regular consistency. Put the food around the sleep, make the sleep cues a priority. But if you ever think that your baby's not sleeping because they're hungry, stop trying to sleep them and feed them, and you can have both. You can have sleep and have lots of feedings during the day, and always put the milk first and then the solids after, 1 to 3 times a day, depending on how many solids you're up to yet.
Right, and the timing also has to do with the age, but the sleep pattern also has to do with the age. You're going from
Right.
3 naps to 2 naps to 1 nap, and your meals and snacks are going to separate the amount of time along with that. It's so amazing how the body just accommodates for what the milestones are and what the baby needs. So as long as you're doing both feed on demand, but as far as solid foods, you want to have a consistent schedule, just like Tracy said. So that's the best way to go.
And start with breakfast. When you introduce solids, breakfast or lunch first, because if your body is going to have a negative reaction to the food and then disrupt sleep, you want that to happen during the day, not in the middle of the night. So when you introduce the
Right.
new foods, morning or lunch, not dinner.
Right, I totally agree with that. Any new foods, any new change in transitions, you're going to do that earlier in the day, because you also want to watch for other reactions. You want to watch for flushing skin or vomiting, diarrhea, whatever's going to happen, you want that to happen during the day. So that's a very good point.
Because then you're awake.
Yes, because then you're awake. Nobody wants to wake up for that. So a child might wake up often if they don't have enough nutrition during the day. If you're not feeding on demand, for example, you're not giving enough snacks, you're not having consistent meals, if they don't eat enough during the day, that could impact their sleep, that they're going to be waking up more often.
I actually have a really good analogy for that. Imagine that your baby's body is like one big milk jug, and you have to fill up that milk jug every single day. And so if you space out the feedings thinking that, well, if I can get my baby to go 4 hours between feedings, which is super long, 4 hours between feedings, then they'll get used to being fed less often and they'll wake up less in the middle of the night. But remember, you have to fill up that milk jug. So if they get less feedings during the day, their calorie intake need increases at nighttime. So they will wake up more times in the middle of the night in order to fill up their milk jug. So if you want to try increasing daytime feedings to decrease nighttime feedings, that is a great strategy to play with.
Right, and that actually carries through to toddlerhood. You want to space meals even in toddlerhood 2 to 3 hours apart, not more than that, because they need that nutrition. And even when you're like, I don't know, 36 years old, you might still need snacks. You might still
40.
wake up at 3 in the morning and need a banana. Not like that happened to me last night. And I also mentioned if your child is born underweight or premature, they're going to have different needs. They're going to have different growth spurts on a different timeline, and you need to accommodate for that. I once spoke to a mother who had 12-week-old twins who had very high expectations for their sleep. And the thing is that her expectations were off base based on something that a professional who was not Tracy maybe told her, but they also did not take into account that the babies were born premature. They were 6 weeks premature. So effectively, these babies were an adjusted 6 weeks old. So we really need to adjust our expectations to what's reasonable. And it's best to speak to a professional about that. It's also best to speak to the right professional about that.
Okay, well, Yaffi, let me clarify that with you. When
Mm-hmm.
it comes to sleep, you deal with the adjusted age. So
Yes.
from 40 weeks gestation, that's when we start counting how old your baby is to figure out what would be appropriate for sleep. So I wouldn't work with someone under, well, I would work with them, but I wouldn't suggest anything that looked like sleep coaching before 18 weeks old from 40 weeks gestation. But I had been told that when it comes to food and when you offer solids and stuff, that comes from birth. So if they're earlier than that, their digestive system would kind of develop faster. So that's not true. It's also from 40 weeks gestation for those expectations?
For those expectations, as far as that early, yeah, it's adjusted, definitely. It depends when you get a little bit further out, when you get to 3 months, 6 months, 8 months, it depends how premature they are and the rate of their catch-up growth. So it really, I mean, when you're talking about 12 weeks old, yeah, we're still dealing with adjusted rate very much. But when you get further out, it depends on the situation.
So do you have an idea of how many weeks adjusted that you would start to really look at the adjusted? So 3 weeks at 18 weeks makes a huge difference for sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 1 week at 18 weeks makes a huge difference for sleep. So you're saying that when they're 3 months old, then some of that adjusted might not matter as much if it's not a large adjustment?
Yeah, it really depends how much the adjustment is. If a child was 6 weeks early, that's a bigger deal. If they're 2 weeks early, you're at 3 months, you're really not looking at a whole lot of difference right there.
Okay.
And it really does depend on the individual situation and how much they have developed, you know. So it's better to look at that by a case-by-case basis, but it really depends on how premature they were and how much they've grown since then and their milestones. So
Okay.
that's much better on a case-by-case basis. But in general, we definitely use the adjusted age for a while. Yeah. Um, so really, the overarching theme that I want to get across is that micromanaging nutrition as an attempt for increased sleep causes a strained relationship with your child and the child to have a strained relationship with food. If you think, if my child eats this, they will sleep better, that's going to automatically put pressure on that meal. Because it's not if my child eats this, then they will sleep better. It's if my child doesn't eat this, I'm never going to sleep again. And this is not the relationship you want with your child, where you're trying to force them to eat a piece of tofu because it's higher in tryptophan, for example.
It
You
is? I had no idea. I thought
Tofu
it was
is
just
fairly
tofu.
high in tryptophan, yeah. But you don't want that relationship with your child where you feel like they need to eat something or you're never going to sleep again. And I can tell you as an exhausted mother, that's where you go. That's where I go. So you don't want that relationship with your child, and your child needs to learn that they have autonomy over their body. If they're hungry, they get to eat. If they're full, they get to stop. And you don't need anything getting in the way of that relationship because that is a much more long-term relationship than your relationship with sleep. And it's
Would you
really important to understand that.
would you say that it's true that if you always offer your baby healthy foods and whenever they're hungry, they get to eat these healthy foods and whenever they want to stop, then they stop, that they'll never be fat?
Well, it's been proven in multiple studies that when a child has access to a varied diet and autonomy over how much they eat, assuming that everything is age appropriate, that they will meet their nutrition needs. As far as
Their
what the
body will just naturally self-regulate and they'll learn how to feed how much they need and
yes,
develop good habits as a
they will
child
learn how
and
much
never be
they eat.
fat.
Well, see, the never be fat thing, I'm very much into intuitive eating. And the idea is that your body is going to be what your body is going to be. And your body's a miracle and you need to love it. Um, There is a lower chance when you know that food is not scarce and that you can eat what you want and stop when you're full, you are less likely to overindulge. You're less likely to stick in your heels and refuse to eat as a way to get back at your parents, which yes, children do that. So that means that you're less likely to have an unhealthy relationship with food down the line. I couldn't guarantee actual body shape because there are a lot of factors that go into that, and I think that we are really focusing more on shifting towards a look at all the
So
things your body can do rather than look how big your body is,
I should say
Like
healthy. I
just
should
trying to
use
get away from
that
that.
word, healthy. Your body will be more likely, you have a better chance of being healthy.
You have a higher chance of being healthy. Yes.
I have so many
And
friends watching this. It's really distracting.
yeah, you're breaking up just a little bit there.
You
Yeah,
were a
so
few minutes too.
what's that?
You were breaking up a few minutes too, but I have so many friends watching this that show up on the bottom because I've never done this before. That's really distracting.
Okay, so let's get to my nutrition tips and then we'll go to any tips that you have for sleep as well. Okay. So tips, varied diet, high in plants, and adequate hydration is really what's going to maximize nutrition. And when you have adequate nutrition, you're more likely to have um, better sleep, restful sleep. So it
A
always
better
comes back.
chance, a better chance of good
Yeah,
sleep.
better chance.
Yes.
You're setting yourself up for a better chance for sleep. It's like having, a comfortable bedding, for example. So it always comes back to that Michael Pollan quote from The Omnivore's Dilemma. Eat real food, not too much, mostly plants. And this is what we want to feed our kids. You want to feed on demand as far as nursing and using a bottle. Every 2 to 3 hours, you do not want meals to be further than 2 or 3 hours apart. And that goes through 5 years old, maybe longer. You want to make sure that you're feeding age appropriate. Milk, solids. Make sure you're giving snacks between meals. It's really important. Transition appropriately with the milestones and don't micromanage the nutrition. Just feed a varied diet. Let your child decide when they're hungry and when they're full and be consistent. So those are my nutrition tips to maximize sleep. So Tracy, what do you have to say?
Well, I heard a doctor say that if your baby spits up a lot, this was like for reflex, that if your baby spits up a lot and you're breastfeeding, that as the milk goes down, it immediately starts to get absorbed into the body, even through the throat. And when it comes back up again, it actually has another opportunity to get absorbed through the throat. So even if your baby's spinning up, they're still actually getting a lot from it, even though you're feeding them more often. You think that, oh, they spit it all up, they don't have it anymore. No, they got some. It's still good.
That sounds
A question. I just thought it was awesome. Um, a lot of times that people will ask the mom when they have a new baby, how's your baby sleeping? And I think that question is actually inappropriate. The better question to ask is, how are you sleeping? How is the mom sleeping? Because babies aren't supposed to sleep a lot. Not at first. They're supposed to wake up a lot to connect with their mom, to eat a lot. And how often they eat has a lot to do with how fast they digest their food and how big their stomach is and how fast the mom's letdown is as she's nursing. And so waking up frequently is normal, and it can actually make a mom feel bad if her baby's waking up as if she's doing something wrong, and she's not. So a better question, I wish I could just tell the whole world, a better question is to ask the mom, how are you sleeping? Because that's a question about coping. How are you coping with this new scenario that you're in? And it's an opportunity to offer help. So if the mom is really sleep deprived, to offer to come and not to come and hold her baby. She wants to hold her baby, to come and do the dishes and vacuum and bring her dinner and give her an opportunity to really spend some time with her baby. I'm sure she'll let you hold the baby for a minute, but let the mom spend that time with the baby and not have to worry about some of that other stuff. And if the mom is coping, and even though the baby might be waking 3 or 4 times a night, maybe that mom has decided to co-sleep, or she has a sidecar, in order to cope with all of, but she wakes up, she feeds the baby, and she goes right back to sleep. The baby goes right back to sleep. that is not a sleep problem. That is totally fine. That mom is coping well and should not have to worry at all about changing habits for sleep or getting their baby to sleep more. If the mom is coping well with the waking, that's not a sleep problem. But if the mom is sleep deprived and the baby is sleep deprived, and you can tell from their behavior that it's getting dangerous, like so dangerous that the mom will drive through the garage door without opening it, that's sleep deprivation, and that's dangerous. And if your baby is under 18 weeks, you need to find a way to cope. If your baby is over 18 weeks, you can work with someone like me to help make some gentle changes and figure out some behavioral techniques to fix it. And if your baby is over 6 months or over 9 months or over a year and still waking up a lot, there are a lot of really good books out there. But if your baby is really young, working with someone like me that's going to make sure that you don't do cry it out is healthy. Babies that have an alert temperament, if you do cry it out on a baby with an alert temperament, you can actually cause an anxiety disorder, because it's all about security. If you don't feel secure, you can't sleep. So you have to be secure and getting good nutrition and comfortable and developing that good relationship with the mom. It's all about reading body language.
I think that's a great point. So we had some questions here. We have one, yay breastfeeding. Yes, yay breastfeeding. I'm fully supporting breastfeeding. I just also like to kind of toe the line, just because some people aren't. Some people find that there are a lot of obstacles, and I try to be sensitive for that. And Jenny says, I'm super nervous about switching from formula to milk. And that's always a question, transition. And I can address that more personally by writing. I can address that in written form after. And Suzanne says, you rock. I love how you address the fat question. Yay, Suzanne. Thanks. So a fun announcement. Tracy and I have decided to do a little partnering, and because it turns out a lot of people like to have both of us. So we're doing a package that will be on our website that is half an hour with Tracy, half an hour with me, to be scheduled separately. And that package is going to be $150, and you can get both of us. So that's exciting. Tell all your friends. Thank you so much, Tracy, for coming. This was really fun. I hope you had a good time.
I did. Thank you.
So thanks for watching Naptime Nutrition. I will be back next week. I don't have a topic picked out, so if you have any suggestions, please feel free to comment below. See you next week. Thanks.